Good morning and happy Mother's Day to all the mamas out there. Today we're doing our first warning weather Q&A, talking about some heat that we are going to expect later this week, as well as other viewer related questions that were submitted to our KXAN Meteorologist Rich Segal. Rich, thanks for joining me on this beautiful Sunday. How are you doing?
Oh, you know what? The weather this weekend has been really ideal. I wish we could bottle this up and keep it with off and on rain, mild air. But the heat's coming, and we have a couple of questions to answer that. But as you said, and it's always worth repeating, Happy Mother's Day to all who are celebrating today.
Yes. Yesterday's weather I thought was the most perfect weather. It started pretty breezy, then we got a little bit of rain, and then that sun came out. It was just anything you wanted in one day.
Exactly. By the way, we were talking, you and I were talking earlier, we're thinking of changing our name. How does this sound? Sunday Mornings with Rich.
Let us know. Send us your inputs to report it at KXAN.com. Rich, let's go ahead and get started. We have those viewer questions that you sent over.
Okay.
And the first one is, why is it going to get so hot soon?
We have a weather setup right now that we see on our map. We'll take a look at this is the 850 millibar forecast over the next few days. You see that L that's over Louisiana today. That's the system that gave us the rain yesterday, but it's going to move away. It's responsible for the few clouds that we're seeing today. And you see that big H moving from the Baja Peninsula this morning across Mexico, and it lands in Texas by Wednesday. This is going to be a mini heat dome. It's going to set up shop for a few days over the area. It is going to lead to our hottest temperatures of the May month as we approach triple digits. And this may not stick around too long, but we have seen in the summers in past years the setup of a heat dome. And so we had a question about that. What is a heat dome? And it's when a large area of high pressure gets trapped in a given area. In our case, over the state, but sometimes it'll hang out in the western part of the United States, big enough and large enough that it ridges back on into Texas and giving us that dry air aloft. Hot air, you as Kristen and Nick and all of us have talked about before, when we have high pressure over the area, the hot air gets pushed to the surface, and if it sticks around long enough, it leads to a period of prolonged and intense heat. Those high temperatures soar, as they will. Tomorrow, not so bad, given what's coming behind it Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and it could linger for a few days, but we've seen these high-pressure domes last for several weeks, like we had in 2011 and in other years, but 2011 always stands out for me because that was the year that we had 90 days where the high temperature got to 100 degrees or more.
Yeah, Rich, I was reading your blog post that you created today, and I like how in your graphics right now you have dangerous heat. Mm-hmm. We'll get more into the dangerous heat when we talk about the blog post, but our second question is, you mentioned there could be a heat advisory. Why?
We're looking, I think if there is going to be an advisory, it likely would happen on Wednesday, because that's the day that is going to be our hottest, but essentially the advisory versus the excessive or the excessive heat warning means that we have elevated heat in the area. The heat advisory for air temperatures at or above 103 with a heat index of 108. And for those people who are new to the area, a heat index, if you've never heard of it before, because there are some people that haven't heard, there are other parts of the country that don't have to deal with the heat index. But essentially the heat index is what the temperature feels like on your skin relative to not only the temperature, it takes into account the air temperature and the relative humidity. And so on those days where the humidity is high and the air temperature is high, we get this really brutal heat indices and you sweat a lot. And this is when you need to pay attention to your body's warning signals. The extreme heat warning is for air temperatures of 105 and a heat index of 113 or higher. Wow. Now, we don't see too many of those 113 or higher from, let's say, I-35 on out to the hill country, but we do see these 113s and higher in parts of especially maybe Bastrop, central and eastern Bastrop, on over into Lee and Fayette counties. We've had heat indices as high as in the last year at about 100 to 121, and that leads us to these things that you should pay attention to: heat-related illnesses, heat exhaustion, versus heat stroke. And I'm just going to go through these really quickly so that you can see what you're looking at when it comes to one versus the other. One, obviously, the heat stroke worse than the heat exhaustion. But when you start feeling heat exhaustion, you're feeling faint, you're feeling dizzy, you sweat a lot. When you're looking at a potential heat stroke, you have a throbbing headache, your body is not cooling itself, so there is no sweat. You have a rapid, strong pulse, and it's time to call the medics to help you out. Again, most people who are natives of this area understand this, but we're always concerned, as me, about the people that are new to this area, who have, like I said, who have never dealt with the heat index before, who really need to understand the importance of paying attention to your body's warning signals. We know that there are people who have moved here who have jobs that require them to work outdoors, and so this is why we tell people light colored loose fitting clothing, a wide brim hat, plenty of sunscreen, and most important, I think more than that, plenty of water. You have to hydrate frequently and often. You should start your hydration process before you even venture out into the summer heat, and then continue to hydrate throughout the day. And again, we cannot stress this enough too. Water, water, water. Not beer, not iced tea, just plain water will help you so much more than any other drink that you could put in your system.
Yeah, and you're right. There's so many people that move to Austin throughout the entire year, especially in the summertime. I think moving is the most popular around summertime. So be aware, know your heat-related safety tips. Rich, are you originally from Austin or from Central Texas?
No, I'm from New Jersey.
Have you ever experienced heat exhaustion or heat stroke?
Fortunately, no. In my time being a meteorologist here in Austin since 2000, when you see the tips, you know that they're there for a reason. We're not just trying to bamboozle you with all of this stuff, but it's just so important that you understand the difference between the two, that you understand that you must listen to your body. If you start feeling dizzy or lightheaded, then if you're working outdoors, you must get into a cooler environment and take the appropriate time necessary to recover.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people don't think that heat exhaustion is a real thing, but you will believe it when it happens to you.
It is a real thing, yes. Yeah. And I think last year, as I recall, during the hottest times of the season, which for us is June, July, and August. Obviously, August is the month that we have our hottest high average at 97.8, and July at 96.6, and June is 93 something. But we did not have too many incidents last year of people that needed to be at the doctor's office or the hospitals. Every time we checked, the numbers were reasonably low, but nevertheless, they were there.
Yeah, they're always there. So if you're headed to Barton Springs or Lake Travis trying to paddleboard, remember, take your water, your hat, your light colored clothing, and be prepared.
Right.
We have our third question here, and it is, what do you consider normal for rain?
All right, this is a question that we had last month, but it's always worth repeating because we run a graphic from the Climate Prediction Center that says 8 to 14 day precipitation outlook, or 8 to 14 day temperature outlook. The daily rain is measured by the amount of daily rain totals in a 30-year period. In this case, it was that for the period that ended, the 30-year period that ended in 2020, and the numbers will be revamped in 2030. So it is the climate normal is the average of all those rain days divided by the number of days that you're calculating. May starts with 1400s, and during the month we get as high as 1800s. May is the wettest month of the calendar year with a normal of 5.04, which we really do hope we get. Here in the first 10 plus days of the month, we are sitting at 1.36 after a tenth of an inch yesterday, but we don't have any rain in the forecast until Friday, but even then it's a low chance it carries into next weekend, 10 to 20%, and that's about it. But that's how the daily rain is calculated. The number of days, the number of rain days divided by the number of days that you are using in your calculation.
Oh, and we did have plenty of rain starting early May, so hopefully, fingers crossed, we continue to see it throughout the month.
Yes.
Our last question I believe we have is any guess as to this coming hurricane season, which I believe starts in July, right?
July 1st. June.
June.
June 1st. The Atlantic hurricane season starts on June 1st. The Eastern Pacific hurricane season starts on May 15th. So that's just a few days away. But the guest from Colorado State University, Dr. Klotzbeck, and his team has predicted that this will be an above normal season. 17 named storms, 14 is average, 9 hurricanes. That's when the winds reach 75 miles an hour. 9 hurricanes versus 7, and then 4 major hurricanes, which is one above the average of 3. Major hurricanes, category 3, 4, or 5. Category 3 winds start at 111. Now, limiting factors could be the annual Saharan dust layer that comes across the Atlantic from West Africa. That could limit because it provides limited access for storms to develop in the Atlantic Basin. And by the way, in the Atlantic Basin, we're also talking about the Gulf and the Caribbean. The question that always seems to pop up too is how many of these might affect Texas, and the answer is we really don't know. It goes one way or the other. Most of the storms last year did not make it into Texas. But Texas may get the benefit of one of those storms during the course of the summer and fall, but let's not hope it's anything drastic. Let's just hope we get some beneficial rain out of it. We're looking at an above normal season, but there could be limiting factors. And the peak of the hurricane season starts in August and runs into early October. So it peaks in September.
Well,
and by the way, for those that care, there you go. Hurricane within 50 miles of the Texas coast, 54% versus the average of 36, and a major hurricane, 25% with an average of 16. So the Colorado State University people feel that Texas may be primed for something to happen this year. But I wanted to share with you the names because people always ask, is my name on there
always
this year?
Asking.
Andrea first, Barry second. Those are the Atlantic hurricane names for 2025. And in the Eastern Pacific, the first name is Alvin, the second name is Barbara. They even have an X on here, Zena, if we get that far. And, we'll start seeing some storms in the Eastern Pacific, I think, before too long.
I don't know why people want their names to be on the list. That's my question.
Pride.
Yeah, I guess. But hopefully we stick to these names and we don't have to pull new names from the other alphabet when we do hit hurricane season. Rich, we're going to take a quick break, but when we get back, we'll talk a little more about your blog post.
Okay.
We'll be right back. We're back, Rich. We were just talking about hurricane season and what guesses there are for this year's hurricane season, but let's dive into your blog post. You posted a blog today, and it had to do with that heat that we're expecting midweek next week. What can you tell us about that?
Well, originally I was not going to write about that. I had something else that I was going to write about today as it pertains to wildfires, but this seemed to grab at me. About 8 a.m. I was trying to think of what should I change this to, and how can I make it relatable to what's happening with the weather. And it's like, well, nothing better than to remind people and to educate people, because there's a little difference between the two. We're reminding people who live here, we're educating people that are new to the area about what's to come, what are the possibilities of records perhaps being set, but more important, the importance, boy, let me start that over. More important, the significance of, how heat, what heat does to the body during the hot times of the year. We know that there are a lot of people, especially with all of these construction projects that are ongoing throughout the year. Yep. They go on during the summer. They don't take a break, but important for people to understand that there is a difference between heat exhaustion and heat stroke. The importance of taking care of not only yourself, but of your children. Make sure they have the sunscreen on, make sure they're drinking plenty of water, to look in on the elderly, because what we found in some areas of the country when it gets this hot is that some people on a fixed income are reluctant to turn on that air conditioner and to turn it down appreciably. And this results in tragedy, because, we see it every year. And so check on the elderly. If we have one of those hot days like we have Wednesday, and you know someone who is living shut-in perhaps, who may be reluctant to do so, invite them to come stay with you and give them that cool environment to stay in. This is one of those times of the year upcoming where we look forward to the sun going down and taking somewhat of an edge off the heat. So I wrote about this today just to remind people, again, those things that we just talked about a few minutes ago. Plenty of water, plenty of water, plenty of water, light-colored, loose-fitting clothing, a wide-brim hat. If it's too hot for you to be outdoors, it's too hot for your pet. And you want to walk your dog in the coolest time of the morning, which is usually between about 6 and 9, or you wait until around sunset. But you should never walk your pooch during the heat of the day. If you put your hand on that asphalt or that pavement, and if it's hot enough, it's burning your hand, it's going to burn their feet, their paws. Yep. And we want to avoid that as much as possible. In this blog, we also talk about the criteria for the heat advisory, the criteria for the excessive heat warning, and a few other tips on there as well, including just identifying that June, July, and August, or in this case, August, July, June, numbers 1, 2, and 3 in terms of the hottest months of the year.
Yeah, I recently had my AC company come out and take a look at my AC unit and see if everything is prepped for this summer. And one recommendation they gave me was to add, I think it was like sun UV plastic covering to my windows, as well as the blackout curtains on every single window to help. So I'm sure if you have a family member that isn't very handy around their house, go and do this for them.
Of course, yes, that's a great idea. Fortunately, I have to say that, where I live, it does get hot, but I have so many oak trees around the condo complex that I live in, so I don't have to run my AC as much because the trees are acting as a buffer from the heat. So I'm not moving anytime soon.
I wouldn't either. I would love that to help with the summer heat. Rich, I had another question, but it completely blew my mind. What are we looking at for the weather for the rest of today and maybe into tomorrow?
It's just going to be so nice today. Sunshine, scattered fair weather clouds. As we get into the heat of the afternoon, we'll be in the low to mid 80s, which is a lot like we had yesterday. No rain this afternoon. It's going to be nice and dry, and then tomorrow we start that warming trend as the upper high over the Baja now gets a little closer to the area. It will be over Mexico tomorrow, and so tomorrow's highs will be mostly in the upper half of the 80s to a few low 90s.
We've also been talking a lot about severe weather recently and rain, and how your app can tell you about the rain, but can it help us with heat advisories?
It's just, yes, our KXAN weather app will identify heat advisory when it is issued. And I think that there may be one, like I said, I think there may be one issued for Wednesday as we get into the hottest time of the work week. So just, make sure your app is up to date. Our app is just ideal. And even though there is no rain, we'll remind people again that setting in the bottom right-hand corner should be set to PAST, past.
Yes, of course. And how can anyone send any questions that they'd like to be featured on our Sundays?
Right. It's reported, REPORTIT, reported at KXAN.com.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Rich.
You're
Before
welcome.
we go, is there anything you want to mention?
The weather team did its summer outlook yesterday. We went out to Lake Travis to shoot this. It was really kind of fun. All were there except for Jim, but ironically enough, Jim was kind of with us in spirit because we were using his boat. But Jim is on vacation right now, and so he allowed us to use his boat. We were out. We were talking about things that included our guesses. Each of us made a guess as to how many triple-digit high temperatures there would be. And we also talked about the drought. I talked specifically about the fact that the last 9 months have had below normal rainfall, and in that 9-month period, it started in August, coming into April. that we have only had a little more than 50% of our normal rain, and that just has made the drought even worse. There wasn't much of an improvement in the most recent release of the drought monitor. So we talked about that. We talked, Freddie talked about the lakes and the aquifer. Kristen shared more information about the lakes, and Tommy with an January to April outlook. So everybody had a different part that they were doing, and we ended by giving our guesses. And once again, this year I guessed highest, but I have a lot of confidence in my guess of 58 days of triple-digit heat. If we're getting off to a start this early, who knows what's going to happen in June, July, and August? So don't be angry with me. Tommy had the lowest guess at 38. I think Nick had 40. Jim had 41. Kristen had 40. No, Freddie had 45, and Kristen had 56. She originally had 58, but she had to change her guess because for some reason we couldn't be tied.
Well, I'm holding on to Tommy's guess because I'm not looking forward to this summer heat.
Well, Tommy may know what he's talking about. Last year we had 32. The average is 29. So I guess twice as many as the average.
Well, thanks so much for joining me,
Thank
Rich.
you.
We'll see you next Sunday.